Who is going to win the ACC, man? For the last decade, Clemson has reigned supreme in the Atlantic Coastal Conference. And you already know what Ric Flair says, to be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo! And there are many people who believe that the Florida State Seminoles are going to be able to win the ACC, even Vegas. Before I started recording, at this moment, FSU is the favorite to win the ACC in 2023. And if they're going to be able to do that, they have to be able to knock off Clemson. Now, we know that they didn't really do that last season because Clemson pretty much had their way with them last year. But this is a different Florida State team. This is the most talented FSU team that we have seen in a very long time. And if you're a Clemson fan, you better not be overlooking FSU, man. Like, FSU has a super talented team. They're stacked on the offensive line. Their offensive line was a huge question mark going into last season. It's not anymore. This offensive line is elite. It's probably the best in this conference. Clemson's offensive line was inconsistent last year. And when you look at what FSU returns, they have some of the best players in college football at their positions. Jordan Travis arguably is one of the best QBs in college football. Some people think he's going to end up winning the Heisman. Now, I don't know about all that, but he is good enough to be able to end up being a finalist for it. He's super dynamic. This guy has improved tremendously as a passer. I remember one time, there was a point where every time Jordan Travis came into the game a couple of years ago, you knew FSU was going to run the football because he couldn't throw the ball to save his life. So his development as a passer has been really incredible. You got Trey Benson coming back. You got Johnny Wilson at wide receiver. This dude is 6'7", 235 damn pounds. How the hell do you stop this? All Jordan Travis literally has to do is throw that damn football up, and Johnny Wilson's going to catch it. This dude is 6'7", 235 pounds. And I can't, for the life of me, understand how the hell Arizona State allowed this dude to lead the program. If I was Arizona State and I was whoever is the new head coach at the time that Johnny Wilson was on Arizona State's roster, as soon as he would have hit the transport, I would have said, hey, bro, like, you got to come back, man. Like, what do we have to pay you to stay in Arizona State? This dude is 6'7", 235 pounds, dog. Like, where do you find this at? This dude should end up being a first-round pick with no questions. Not just that, but you just got Michigan State transfer Keon Coleman. It doesn't get no better than that. And you already had Jaheim Bell transfer from South Carolina. This dude is one of the most athletically gifted tight ends in all of college football. He may just be more athletic than Brock Bowers, and that may be a hot take, but Brock Bowers wasn't doing what the hell South Carolina had Jaheim Bell doing. Jaheim Bell was playing Wildcat QB. He was playing fullback. He probably could have played running back. This dude was playing tight end. You probably could line this guy up at wide receiver. This guy is literally the definition of a chess piece. You can put this guy anywhere on the offense and he's going to succeed. Like, this FSU offense is super stacked. When you look at this defense, they returned most of their starters from last year. You got the number one or the second best cornerback coming out of the transfer portal, and Fentrell Cypress out of Virginia. He was the second ranked cornerback in the transfer portal. I called him number one, but I forgot about Travis Hunter. But can we really count Travis Hunter because we knew he was going to Colorado the whole entire time? But the point is, you got Fentrell Cypress, all right? Your secondary already is really good. Your only concern really is going to be at one of your safety positions. That's pretty much it. At linebacker, you're going to be stout. On the defensive line, you're going to be incredible, man. Like, you were able to get Jared Verse to return. This dude could have been a top 15 pick in this past year's NFL draft. Next year, he's expected to be a top 5, top 10 pick. You have Fabian Lovett at defensive tackle, one of the better interior defensive linemen in the nation. For Clemson, man, like, they're going to have their work cut out against them when they play FSU this year. Now, you already know that Dabo Swinney refuses to use the transfer portal, bro. Like, I think Dabo Swinney is one of the biggest trolls in college football when it comes to how he uses the transfer portal. The only time this man uses the transfer portal is to bring back a former quarterback that transferred out of the program, bruh. Like, this man just refuses to use the transfer portal at all. He believes in player development over everything, and that's good. But when they play Florida State this year, and Florida State smacks these boys around for 4 quarters, and they end up winning the ACC, I think, Dabo Swinney is going to start rethinking his philosophy. Because here's the thing. With success comes complacency. When you're used to being so successful at something for a very long time, doing it your way, it's hard to kind of get people to change their minds for certain things. That's why I always have so much respect for Nick Saban, because one thing about Nick Saban is that he doesn't take too long to adjust. Like, as soon as he started seeing all of these other offenses in college football running the no huddle or running a spread offense, guess what he did? He started finding offensive coordinators that knew how to run the spread offense, and he started running that thing. When people started using the transfer portal and NIL, Nick Saban pushed back against it. But eventually, guess what he started doing? Using the freaking transfer portal, using NIL. That's one thing that I always loved about Nick Saban. Like, this guy never hesitates to adapt. He's not really stubborn. Dabo Swinney is a definition of stubborn. This man refuses to change, and you can't really knock him for that because it's worked. They've dominated the ACC for damn near every single season the past decade. But I think with Florida State now, with how they use the transfer portal, getting the number one ranked offensive tackle, and Jeremiah Byers out of the transfer portal, getting Casey Roddick transfer from Colorado to solidify their offensive line. You look at bringing in Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, and everything that they have gotten from the transfer portal this offseason. Clemson's going to see that, and they're going to be like, damn, bro, like, we could be an even better team if we were able to use the transfer portal and bring in other guys to solidify certain positions of needs. You see, that's going to be the reason why I think FSU is going to end up dethroning Clemson this season. Like, Clemson has a really good team, but they have some concerns when it comes to how good their wide receiving core is going to be. Their key addition wasn't a transfer portal player. They didn't have anybody big that transferred to the program. Clemson's biggest addition was offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. And I got a lot of respect for Garrett Riley. This dude did his thing at TCU. He got a lot of players on that TCU offense drafted into the NFL, including Max Duggan, who, if you watch Max Duggan's play last year, this dude was a good college quarterback, but when you try to evaluate him on an NFL level, he wasn't really all that great. Like, I was trying to watch some film on Quentin Johnston, and my homeboy's like, bro, let's just watch the highlights, man, because Max Duggan's is not all that great. And you saw it kind of against Georgia. So you bring in Garrett Riley, somebody who has the ability to elevate the whole entire offense and all of your personnel. That's going to be a really big plus. And you got to give Dabo Swinney a lot of props for that. Because in the past, Dabo Swinney normally was somebody who traditionally didn't really look to hire guys outside of his family circle or his coaching tree that he already has at Clemson. Normally, what Dabo Swinney does is hire from within. And when they brought back Jeff Scott, who formerly was the head coach at USF, I thought he was going to end up being their next offensive coordinator. I was like, oh, man, here they go. Hiring and promoting within. It's going to backfire. But no, he went ahead and he robbed TCU of Garrett Riley. And that definitely is going to have a big impact on this offense. This offense is probably going to perform at a really high level compared to what it has in previous years. Many people try to put a lot of Clemson struggles on offense on DJ Uyunglele. And even though he was a reason for why the offense wasn't good at times, the offensive coordinator didn't really do him any favors. And DJ Uyunglele spoke out against that. He said that the scheme and the plays that Clemson was running really didn't put him in the best situation to succeed, in his opinion. And you bring in Garrett Riley, somebody who was able to elevate Max Duggan. Like, Max Duggan wasn't even the starting quarterback for TCU going into last season. So for this guy to go from backup QB to Heisman finalist under Garrett Riley shows you how good of an OC he is. And you do have Cade Klubnik, who I believe is going to be pretty good for Clemson. I don't know if he's going to end up being a top level QB at Clemson, because judging from what I saw against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, the stats show that he had a decent game. But if you actually go back and watch that game, I don't really think he was the greatest. And then when you look at the spring game, he didn't really do all that well. He had a really big underthrow in that spring game to one of the wide receivers earlier in that game, which could have been a touchdown if he put the ball in the proper place and that it needed to be. So I still have some reservations about how good Cade Klubnik is going to be, but I don't think the quarterback play is going to be a major issue. But going against this FSU secondary with the dogs that they have, I think that Clemson finally has a team that's going to be able to rival them. And it's been a while since there's been a team in the ACC that legitimately had a shot to win this conference. But you look at what Mike Norvell has done. I remember there was a point where this team had some really dark times. Like, there were people who were questioning if Mike Norvell should still be the head coach going into last season. These boys lost to Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State, like, do any of y'all know who or where Jacksonville State is? Like, this is an FCS school, and they went into Doak Campbell Stadium and not just beat them boys outright, but after the game, they planted their flag in the middle of their field. It doesn't get no disrespectful than that. And not just that, but this was an FCS school. So just think about how far Florida State has come. And the main knock that I hear on FSU isn't their talent. It's really, well, JT, they didn't really beat any highly ranked teams, and a lot of their games came down to the wire. And okay, and they were a 10-win football team. It doesn't matter how you win as long as you win. This is a more talented football team than what it was last season. Last season, I don't think too many people expected FSU to win 10 games, but they did. All you was looking for last season was improvement. This season now, you're expecting to make a statement. You're expecting to win the ACC and potentially make it back to the college football playoffs. Something that you haven't been, or somewhere that you haven't been since that thing first got started years ago. It's crazy how the college football playoffs is about to expand, and maybe FSU might even end up being the last team of the 4-team college football playoff model to get in, after they initially were one of the first teams to be in it during its inauguration. That's going to be a little bit insane. Imagine if we get Oregon back in that thing, which is a pretty good chance that thing happens. Imagine if FSU wins the ACC and Oregon wins the Pac-12 and they rematch in the semifinals of the college football playoffs. Like, that would be nostalgia at its finest. But my guy College Football with Sam says Clemson will win the regular season matchup, but Florida State will win the rematch in the championship game. Yeah, man, there's a really good chance that both these two teams split the season series when they play, but we most likely expect for Florida State and Clemson to make it to the ACC championship game unless something catastrophic happens. But Clemson has a really good team. I mean, they returned 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, which was a little bit of an issue last season. Even though their offensive line played better than what it did in 2021, it was still fairly inconsistent at times. They do lose 3 really good players in Miles Murphy, Byron Breesy, and Trenton Simpson, but I'm not really too concerned about that, because one thing about Clemson is that these boys like a factory when it comes to churning out elite talent on the defensive line. Them in Georgia, I don't know where the hell they find these defensive linemen at, but they know how to find them, boy. It's like a little factory. It's like choo-choo. Like, they just lose good guys in the defensive line and they replace them with guys who are just as good. Now, my question is, how good is that secondary going to be? Because at times, that secondary was getting dotted up. Now, they do have a really good group of corners. I do like their safety position. But at times, that secondary did have a tendency to get dotted up at times. Now, on the defensive line, you have a lot of production returning. One guy that I'm a really big fan of is Xavier Thomas. This guy has potential to be a top 15, maybe top 20 draft pick in next year's draft if he ends up breaking out this season. There are a lot of talented players that are coming back for Clemson's defense. They returned 9 starters from last season. So this defense should still be amongst the best in this conference and amongst the best in college football. Your only question is just going to be, is this offense going to be as good as Florida State's offense? Because Florida State is freaking stacked at every single position. Their offensive line, their running backs, their wide receivers. If they have an injury at wide receiver or running back, it doesn't really matter because they have great depth behind those guys. Clemson does have Will Shipley. They do return Antonio Williams, Bo Collins, but their offensive line, you still have a little bit of concern about it, and their wide receiver core, for the most part, fairly is full of guys who are highly recruited. They were highly touted coming out of high school, but they don't really have a lot of experience. But I think Florida State is going to end up knocking off Clemson for the ACC this upcoming college football season.